to also let you know that we will be recording this and it will be available on YouTube afterwards as well. We have a few questions that people have sent over, but do feel free to pop the questions in the chat as well. And I'd like to remind you to put yourself on mute because we all have people in the background disturbing us sometimes. So yeah, just bear that in mind as well. So I'll give it a few more minutes and then we'll introduce Lucy.
Mr. Treats.
It's Gears on the beat.
Mr. Treats.
As promised, don't want to keep those who are on time waiting. Thank you, Kwame, for the music. Thank you. Just to officially introduce it again, we have Lucy here for our Fenchurch Professionals Migration to Ghana chat. And just to introduce Lucy, just going to run through her LinkedIn real quick, just to give you some of her background. She started off, I would say she started off at Ford Motors and did her MBA at INSEAD, the prestigious INSEAD, in which I think maybe she can correct me, that was the changing factor for her career. She then, I think, wanted to move to another place, but she was pregnant with a second child, so then she ended up she's moved to other companies such as being a Europe executive at Ghana Cyber Group, Millicom International Cellular for a few years there in Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo. She then moved to Ghana to become the managing director there for Vodafone, and then was in Vodafone for a different role as well, and then became the vice chairman of the Ghana Chamber of Telecommunications, and then moved to Airtel, became the managing director there. And also now she's at Morgan Stanley as the managing director. Thank you very much, Lucy. You have a wealth of experience on you there. Just want to hear about where you are now in your life. Obviously, you're at Morgan Stanley, but you're well-traveled with your career, and you've been at great roles as well in different types of companies as well. So where are you today in your mind? Where are you in your thoughts, and how the past has helped you shape who you are today?
Well, good evening, Jackie, and good evening to everyone, and good afternoon to Sam. I know we have some people joining us from the US as well, including my good friend Peter. So good evening, good afternoon to everyone who's joined us today. And before I say anything, I do have to continue to applaud Kwame and yourself, Jackie, for the work that you're doing, deliberately pulling together our people in the diaspora and creating a platform where people can connect, can discuss, can share ideas, can figure out ways to move forward. So thank you for that. You ask a very loaded question. Where are you where am I in my life? I think most importantly, given the situation we find ourselves in globally, first of all, I'm in a place in life where I'm just really thankful and grateful that most people I know have been well and safe through this period. The few people who I know who've been impacted have survived the pandemic, and I think we should all be very grateful that we have the opportunity to even connect and speak today in this way, given that it's a very challenging time for for people around the world. I think from a career point of view, I believe that I'm at a place that is, the right place to be. Everything you do kind of builds on the next, and it prepares you also for the future. So continuing to learn, continuing to grow into the future while creating business value, because it's really important that in whatever we do, we actually create value for the organizations and institutions in which we work. So really important. And from a personal point of view, family, kids are well, husband as well, everybody's well. So I'm grateful they're thriving, they're doing well. So yeah, all in all, I think I'm happy, I'm content.
Yay. You were able to answer the loaded question. I've got so many questions, but I think we were short for time. So I want to the purpose of today is to hear from, I always tell people that I don't see enough CEOs, people at the top that are of Ghanaian origin online. So you actually introduced me to Indra Nui and Malcolm Gladwell. So I met Lucy on the train one day and she had a book and I was like, oh, what book is that? And it was Malcolm Gladwell. And since then, I have been an avid follower of him. But it's so easy to find other people, other mentors. I remember someone saying that when you're so high up, it's hard to be a mentor to everyone. You want to help everyone, but you don't have the time. You can't answer 500 LinkedIn messages, which are genuine, but you just don't have the time to do that and to help everyone. So sometimes the solution is being on platforms such as this and just being available. And I think that's the one thing I crave with Ghanaians of your caliber and, in your status as well. But who do you, your journey to the top, who have you kind of followed and who has been your mentor as such, whether it's virtually or who have you looked up to, particularly those of Ghanaian origin?
Yeah, look, I strongly believe in mentors now. I'll be honest with you and say that there was a time many years ago when I thought it was a complete waste of time, both mentoring and coaching. So I haven't always been sort of gung-ho believer in it. I think when I started, my earliest formalized mentoring relationship was at work, where I was assigned a mentor, an engineering mentor when I started my engineering career. And half the time I thought, I'm just going to do this because I'm supposed to do it. But over time, it's, I've had the opportunity to grow and learn and understand the value those independent external people bring, either because they're further along in their career or they've had other experiences, or there's something that they have done and you would love to learn from and grow from. So yeah, I continue to have mentors. Specifically in Ghana as well. I have mentors from all over the world, but specifically in Ghana, I think not every mentor is necessarily somebody who is senior to me. Some of my mentors can be peers that I'm learning new things from. And some of them can be further ahead and occasionally juniors. I remember, very typically when I moved to Ghana 2008, 12 years ago, one of my old schoolmates, who's still in the industry, she runs one of the telecom companies now. She had been in the industry much longer than I had, and really literally was very open to practically taking me under her wing and saying, do this, don't do this, ask this question, don't ask that question. And for me, that was mentoring because she was in a position in an industry that I knew very little about, even though I had some skills to bring and some experience to bring to the table. I didn't know enough about the actual industry. So that made it a really big difference. I think the vast majority of corporate business leaders in Ghana today will tell you that they are mentored by Sam Jonah. And he just has an amazing way of taking as many of us are willing under his wing and guiding us and saying I know you can go places, I want to help you and so on. So I think Ghana has a lot of great people who are open and willing to mentor. Oh, another example is Joyce I. She has an amazing way of doing it. She does this thing where not only does she keep up with you, but every time you have a transition in your career, she sends you this letter and gives you words of inspiration to tell you that, look, I know you got everything that you need to do this job, but I think that there's so much further you're going to go with this, and I'm here, and you have my blessing, and for it. So we have amazing people in Ghana who are really continuing to nurture and build the people, build up the people around them to make sure that we have a legacy, we have continuity, we have growth overall in the country.
Thank you. Just for, I think other people would want to know how, if they were to go to Ghana today, how would they try and get a mentor? Do they just LinkedIn them? Do they try and get someone's number? How easy is it to get a mentor of, you want like yourself and other great men and women? What's the best way to go about it?
So for me, one of the reasons why I started doing a lot more on social media about 6 years ago was the fact that I had a lot of mentoring requests. And to your point, it's very difficult to physically support all the people that you would like to support because you have physical limitations, timing constraints, and so on. So that's what I tend to use my platform for. I think there is a flaw sometimes, or a mistake when it comes to the selection of mentors. If you select a mentor or you approach someone who's so far away from you in their career, they're not always the right person to give you the support and guidance that you need, right? So some of the examples I've given you are people who have become mentors later in my career. Earlier in my career, I gave you an example of someone who was more a peer who was mentoring me, and I've had bosses who've mentored me. So I would say, when you go to Ghana, like you would in any location, don't choose a mentor that you think has done everything in their career. So yeah, once I connect with this person, they're going to give me the blueprint. I'm going to get there. You probably actually need someone who's a step or two away from you, who can actually help you build and engage with your career. Now, especially if you're from the diaspora and you're going to Ghana, then I would strongly recommend that you want someone who has a track record of working in the corporate environment in Ghana, who understands the ins and outs, how things were just similar to what I did, who will really give you guidance on on how to make yourself relevant, how to settle in, and how to start to build your network is what I would suggest. And it may be that person is in the company that you joined, they may be in another company, they may be somebody that's introduced to you through school. I do think examples like Fenchurch Professionals is a good place to start looking for both men and women. There are other networks in Ghana that you can join physically in Ghana. If you're a woman, you can join the Executive Women Network, which we founded a few years ago. There a lot of professionals find mentoring and support through some of the Rotary clubs in Ghana as well. So there are lots of different opportunities through which you can meet and build a network and find mentors in Ghana.
Thank you. I think Kwame's job is also to write down all the great directions that you give us as well in the chat. Continue to drop your messages, your questions as well. I think you being here is kind of, we have two hats listening in terms of the hat of entering Ghana's corporate world, and also being, our end goal is also to be at the top of our career, whatever it may be. So having two hats on when we're listening to you. But how did you get in? How did you get your foot into the door? And then how could we also, obviously things have changed since you went to Ghana, but what's the best thing? So you accredit your MBA and NCAD to being one of the contributing factors, but us today, what advice can you give us to kind of leverage and get a good job in Ghana based on our experiences, so we're not all coming in at entry level?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't say, the way I positioned the conversation around the MBA, and exactly as the boss who hired me actually told me, he said, look, it's like your calling card. It's your business card that got you in the door. Now that you're in the door, you've got to show me what you can do. So I wouldn't overemphasize that and make it sound as though I got this job because of an MBA, and then that was, the rest was easy. That's just the beginning. And a lot of people have built fantastic careers in Ghana without said MBA. So it's not the ultimate requirement. I think, especially when it comes to higher education beyond our first degrees, we need to choose very carefully and very deliberately. I always say to people who ask me, if you want to study additionally, what is it for? I was very clear that as an engineer, I knew very little about how business works, how marketing, finance functions, and all these other functions work. So I was very clear that I was getting it to broaden my knowledge base. But someone else may decide that they want to be a specialist in a specific field, and maybe the MBA won't serve you, and what you need to do is actually increase your specialization in the field that you've chosen. You asked a specific question of how did I get in, and it's a almost overly simplified story, because I had been trying for 3 years to get a job anywhere on the continent, right? So you go from trying for literally 3 years to being introduced practically overnight. But I guess because I've been trying for so long, people around me in my network got to know that I was looking for opportunities, to be honest, anywhere on the continent of Africa, but obviously number one place would always be Ghana for me, because I'm from Ghana. So it was a lady who I'd worked with, and at the time I wasn't even still working with her, but we kept in touch. And I was going to Ghana. I went to Ghana in May of 2008, and she just said to me, "Look, I know you're still looking. My sister is an HR director. Why don't you go and talk to her, and she can give you some pointers," right? So there's this thing about be open to people teaching you. So I really went to see her, not as in give me a job or do you have jobs in your company. I went to see her as in, show me, give me any tips. What can I do to increase my chances of finding a job? I have been trying for a few years, so there is a track record of trial. And I saw her and she gave me her tips, and then I went back home. And a day or two later, she called me and said, "Oh, by the way, we were recruiting a guy who has kind of a similar profile to yours, but he's French Ivorian, and he stood us up at the last minute. He said he's not coming. And after speaking to you, you sound like you potentially have, a background that could work. I'm not promising anything, but if you could come in and take our aptitude test, if that goes well, then I will recommend you to the boss to interview you, and then we'll see." So literally that's what happened. So being open and to letting people know that I was looking, making a lot of effort. So there was a lot of preparation, but also in the moment when the opportunity came up, jumping at it, because from speaking to this company to actually joining, it was like 2 months. So that's like really quick. You suddenly got to decide, are you going to do it? And you probably have to decide with your family. If you have a family, you have to tell your friends that you're leaving. And it can be really sudden, but a lot of the time, and I think it's still the same, companies in Ghana worry that when they recruit people from abroad, they get cold feet. So you're not going to have a very long runway between being made an offer and taking the job, because just like this other guy stood them up from France, I guess they do get that kind of response from people in the diaspora who look and look and look, and then at the last minute say, "Well, I don't want to leave. I'm not prepared to leave now."
Okay. You gave us all the tips. So trying in terms of expanding your networks, particularly the fact that your change was to Ghana was also change in industry as well. So expanding your networks and just constantly trying. What does it look like when you actually move to Ghana with your family? How hard is that? Since a lot of us are of age where we might have families or planning to have a family, what's the best thing you would say, the mistakes you've made that you can help us avoid when we're moving, whether we're married or have children or plan to maybe have children wherever?
I'll start with one mistake and then look at that I've learned from, and learning from it helped me a lot, and maybe offer a piece of advice, input. I think the number one mistake I made initially, and I think many people make initially, is not only expecting the environment to be the same, but more importantly, allowing myself allowing the difference to frustrate me, right? That I think was a mistake. Thankfully, I learned from it very quickly. I think I talk about it a little bit in my book. But if you go and you expect that everybody is going to behave and exactly the way that you behave when you're in the UK or US or wherever in a corporate environment. I think that's you'll find that you're wrong in that regard. You will also find that it takes away from your ability to learn the new environment you find yourself in, because you're so busy being critical of what you're encountering that you're not spending enough time actually learning in the new environment. I think a positive thing that I would say worked going from here to Ghana is work ethic. Moving to Ghana doesn't mean that you're going to work less. And I've heard people say, oh, I'm just going to go and I'm going to relax and everybody's going to kind of all hail, she's arrived. Thank goodness, we didn't know what we'd do without her. No, it's actually a lot more hard work, because you're going into an environment where you don't really know the corporate context at all. In my case, it included also an industry change, but more importantly, you don't understand, you don't know the context. So my tip would be sustain your work ethic, because if you have great work ethic, it's probably part of the reason why you got the job. And I would say sustain it, continue it.
So now you're in Ghana, and often the times, as you touched upon, you come to Ghana thinking, oh, I know how to do it. I'm not better, but I've had more exposure to, a better way of the system, better ethics. So I know what it means to be late. I know this, I know that. That kind of ignorance, or the slight chip on our shoulder sometimes. How have you had to adapt once you're in the workplace, and the misconceptions that people have against you as well? Because you come across as such a bubbly character, open as well, very willing to learn. But how do you manage people's misconceptions about you because you're from Abuja, from London, or wherever you're from? And then also your own personal judgments of people, unconscious or conscious.
Such a loaded question. You'd have seen that as you were talking, you got me smiling so broadly, because I think it's the biggest issue, right? I'm not going to mince my words. The vast majority of our own people who go from abroad to Ghana, unfortunately, have a superiority complex. And to be honest, first of all, you're not going to succeed if you feel superior. And quite frankly, you're no good to companies if you feel that way. So if there's one thing I'd say that people need to shift, is to acquire some humility. The vast majority of us on this call belong to at least one WhatsApp group where Ghana or whichever country we come from is discussed. Listen to the tone on those groups. You see, a lot of the time you end up getting a sense of a tone of, everything they do in Ghana is rubbish, and, they don't know what they're about, and, these people are just corrupt. And you see a high degree of negativity that is, I see it a lot. And if people who know me on some of these groups, I just want to engage the conversation, because it is a superiority complex. It's almost as though people themselves feel the need to position themselves above people in Ghana for some personal reason. So first of all, and this is going to be probably the only harsh thing I have to say, and because it's the only harsh thing I have to say, if you feel that way, you're completely useless. And don't bother going, don't bother looking, don't bother trying, because those aren't the people that we need. We need people who have a degree of humility. The fact that things are done differently in another place does not make them wrong. It's just different. If you went from the UK to Estonia, you wouldn't expect Estonians to be the same as Brits. So why would you expect Ghanaians to be the same as Brits? Why is that? Is it that you can't see the value in what they do? Now, in a corporate environment in Ghana, and to be honest, it's one of the few that I do miss a number of things about it not being there. There's such a very strong sense of community that goes beyond the handful of people that you become friends with. And initially, it was something that I had to kind of get my head around. As in, how is it? I remember when I was at Airtel, one of my colleagues unfortunately lost his twin brother, and he had such a close relationship with some of our colleagues that they weren't relatives, but some of them actually took formal time off work to support him because he lost his only sibling who was his twin, and it was just him and his mother. I thought, wow, if it's just you and your mum in other parts of, at least in where I'd worked before, it's very unlikely that people are going to give up their personal, I mean, they'll come and see you and they'll support you, but they're not going to give up their personal time. So remember that there's a very strong sense of community in the corporate environment in Ghana. I think the other thing I'd say is that we're at a different stage of building in Ghana, right? So there's still processes, institutions that we need to put in place strongly. So your expertise can be invaluable if you're willing to marry it with an understanding of the context in which you're operating in Ghana. Does it then mean that that doesn't mean I'm saying you have absolutely nothing to offer? Certainly not. Because you may have had the opportunity to work in environments where structures and processes or even the businesses themselves are more mature, right? Because let me put it into perspective, some of the big companies in Ghana have been around for about 25 years. Some of the very big names that, there are a few, some of the banks have been around over 100 years. But some of the more, tech-oriented companies or telecoms is more up to about 25 years. My point being that, or some are younger, some are 10 years old. You may have worked in a company here that has a very long history that was created over 100 years ago. Processes are embedded in, the culture is very well understood and very well established. You can take some of that learning and that approach into your new environment and be willing to go on a journey with your colleagues to adopt some of those practices where appropriate. The last thing I'll add is that you should never compromise on your values and your ethics. So there's no such thing as, because I'm in Ghana, I have to lower the bar on my ethics, or I have to be corrupt, or let me name it. I'm gonna pay a bribe or receive a bribe. I can assure you that there are many people in corporate Ghana, myself included, who haven't had to do that to get ahead. It's a choice you make. Doesn't mean that occasionally some opportunities may pass you by. Sure, but that happens everywhere in the world. Don't forget. So your choice and how you choose to respond in the environment is you. You cannot sit back and say, I did it because, now I'm in Ghana. I did it because, I think that's what everybody else here does. No, you chose to do it, and it's 100% on you.
I think just to touch on your last point, people do think, even to the smallest degree, you have to accept some form of bribe. But you saying that, what's the smallest thing that even you should say no to if your moral compass is similar to yourself? So we're trying to learn from you there. What are things that you should still continuously say no to and say, although it's accepted, highly accepted here, it's still a bribe, and you can still get around by not doing it?
It's zero. The answer is zero. I think this is the thing. We should stop saying it's accepted here, because it's not accepted by everyone unanimously. So let's not make that assumption, right? Because the same way, and we're not going to go into the politics and the running of other countries, but we sit here and we hear on the news all the time. We hear the most ridiculous things from some really powerful nations, which in reality, the news may not call it corruption and a bribe, but that is exactly what it is. So first of all, we really need to shift our mindset around the negativity that is associated with some of the practices in Ghana, because not everybody is corrupt. If you work for a corporation, then like any other corporation in the world, they will actually have a very clear-cut policy on what is a gift and what is not a gift. Everywhere I've worked in Ghana, there's been a gift policy that's very, very clear. And you and I both know that there's a big difference between a gift at Christmas that is within company policy that you have to declare versus somebody trying to help you to get them to close a deal. So I don't think it's gray at all. I think companies have policies, and they have policies for a reason. When I worked at Ford, we had policies around gifts. When I worked in Ghana, we had policies around gifts. You have to adhere to those policies. It's still a corporate policy. Doesn't matter where you find yourself. So the answer is zero. Anything that's ambiguous is zero. If it's not within the policy, if it's not within the guidelines, if for any reason you feel uncomfortable, the answer is no, period. And that not even a plate of food.
Okay, good to know. Back to cultural adaptability. I started a new job and my manager's French and she's a great leader, but she's very forceful as well. And I wear two hats. I'm a business manager in one sense and a project manager. But when I'm supporting her, I'm with the senior execs. My one-to-one, you have to speak. And meanwhile, I've got the job during COVID and I'm on mute most times because of my daughter and whatnot. And then also sometimes I feel like I need to learn from them. So cultural differences in the UK and the West, maybe, you have to bring something to the table and you have to kind of, she'll still kind of give a rebuttal if you say something against what she thinks, but she wants to hear your opinion. She values that. And sometimes, is it a misconception that we have that at times there's ranking and you can't break rank with your opinions in the room when you move to Ghana, as opposed to in England, you're valued for your thoughts. So do you come across as the opinionated British one in Ghana, whereas in the UK, it'll be perceived as, I like her ideas, she's got good ideas. Obviously, it's in line with the company. You can't always be going left and the company's going right, but bringing those fresh ideas. How do you balance that in a culture where there's a hierarchy in certain instances? So you're not coming in per se as a CEO. We're not, you've come to Ghana and you're maybe just below a manager or something. How do you navigate that?
So again, it's not a Ghana thing, and I think if everybody walked away today appreciating that, what we have to perhaps shift is stop thinking about Ghana as a homogeneous business cultural environment. I think it would serve us all greatly, right? So what I have seen in Ghana is particularly a vast difference. Perhaps, again, the two groups aren't homogenous, but if I had to create a sort of a difference, then maybe I'd say some of the younger, especially homegrown corporations probably operate quite differently to probably a bit more mature international corporations. There is a bit of a difference. I've heard stories of founder CEOs giving people rebuttals and saying, look, you think you have an idea. I founded this company. I don't know why you're thinking you have an idea. But is that a company that I choose to work for? No, right? I just wouldn't want to work because I would do my homework. So I would say, first of all, do your homework. Get some insight into the culture of the organization that you want to join, because if it's overly hierarchical and that doesn't work for you, then I would recommend that you shouldn't join. Having said that, there are many corporations in Ghana where people call each other by their first name. I know some people think that's remarkable, but it's normal. People share their ideas and they are heard, and they have room to for their ideas to bubble up to help the company. So I strongly recommend that you research the culture, because I have had some people that I've worked with move on to other companies and leave because they didn't feel they had a voice and that they could communicate or they could share their ideas. And I've also seen people in companies continue to thrive because they were listened to and they were heard. I would also have to add, though, on the flip side, because when we talk about hierarchy and people not being able to speak up, we tend to focus a lot on the management. I have actually encountered people also who don't seem willing to think. So the flip side is that sometimes you can find yourself in a situation where you think somebody's young and bright and has good ideas, but they're not willing to think. Now, if you have the leadership bandwidth to help them grow their confidence or whatever is holding them back, then fine. But literally, I've seen situations where you're engaging someone and they want you to tell you line by line how they should do their job. And as my first boss in Ghana said to me, so he called people like that passengers. Says, Lucy, you don't need passengers. Anybody who reports to you that you have to carry is a passenger. You don't need them. You need people who are really good, challenge you, push you, and lift you up. And they do exist in Ghana too.
Great, thank you for that. Also, just to let everyone know, you can, later on, we will ask people to, if they want to ask questions directly to Lucy. But in terms of, there was a question here that someone asked in terms of being a woman and how that has possibly or not conflicted at work, provided some form of conflict at work.
I laugh because, gosh, the story is about, I don't think so much conflict as in laying it at the door of the corporation.
Or more so having to consistently prove yourself. That was their question.
So the first angle I'd say is that, look, anyone who knows me knows that, from a family point of view, we have a very sort of well organized, structured approach. Because when you say family, I know most of the time you're thinking about husband, you're thinking about children, and I think you have to all be on the same page, right? So it's important that you're all on the same page. And I think as a family, we are on the same page. Our friends and family know that we go back. I tell you one anecdotal story, really, really not funny, but funny. I remember one Saturday in my first job, and yes, many days I had to work on Saturdays, and I was cooking. And by this time, I hadn't cottoned on to the fact that in Ghana, you could get help with things like that. So I was doing everything myself. And my boss calls us into a meeting. And I rushed to the meeting on Saturday and didn't completely switch off everything on the fire. So, of course, some of my food got burnt that day. I remember recounting the story to my boss, and he was more like, oh my goodness, Lucy, you still think you're abroad. In Ghana, you get help. You don't have to do everything yourself. I'm like, yeah, okay, I guess I need to figure out how to do that. But in terms of the actual workplace, let me tell you something that's interesting. And I experienced this, and I've asked a few other women in corporate Ghana. So at least based on my sample set, it's the truth. In Ghana, we do not, at least from a large corporation point of view, we don't really experience this notion of a gender pay gap. And the reason why I give you this example is that I find that a lot of the time we assume that another location's problem is by default our problem or worse. So any problem you're solving that has global implications, think about whose problem you're solving. A problem in the UK is not necessarily exactly a problem in Ghana, so to speak. In terms of proving myself, has it all been gender related? It's in some instances, yes. There have been instances where I felt that I was better qualified and I'd proven myself more than the male candidate who got the job. So I have seen that a couple of times. But on the flip side, anytime you're passed over, the way I look at it is that it's an opportunity to continue to prove yourself and to grow and to have the courage to challenge yourself. So don't walk around, especially for the women listening, don't walk around with a complete sort of chip on your shoulder that says, just because I'm a woman, it's always going to be hard, or they're going to overlook me, because equally, of course, I made progress being a woman. But it does happen in some situations, because in some situations that a lot of the time, if it's men making the decision, sometimes they do have misgivings about maybe some of the things they're looking for around maybe resilience and the ability to lead and be firm. When I started working at Airtel, I remember so many people kept calling me mummy. And I thought, oh my goodness, if I was a man, would you be calling me daddy? No. But it's part of the connotation that comes with being a woman, right? Because if someone calls you mummy, then invariably they're kind of expecting you to treat them the way you treat your child. And I'm very clear to people that I'm not here to be your mum. So don't call me mummy. I mean, Lucy's fine. As much as you want to be endearing and so on, let's establish the fact that I'm not trying to be your mum, but we're trying to run this place.
Thank you. The next question someone asked is, what's the main difference you found, if you can give tangible examples of the differences in working in the UK as to Ghana? The main differences there.
I think on a personal level, it really depends on how you, on the choices that you make, right? So look, I living in Ghana and not having to commute for a long time to work was like the best thing ever. I do not like commuting. Let's put that out there. I mean, I don't like having to commute to work. So not having to commute so much was great, but that's more on a personal level. There's a unique experience that you have when you work in an environment where you're not the minority. And it's really, really hard to describe. Maybe the best way to describe it for those who have been to school as well in Ghana is to think about the fact that when you were in school in Ghana, you didn't have to think about yourself as being a certain ethnicity or race, you were just you. And I think there's a huge amount of liberation being in an environment where you have the experience of not being the minority, which, of course, in the Western world as well, the groups that are the majority and have that same feeling. So that confidence that you have as a majority applies also when you're in Ghana. And it gives you a certain confidence to build your career up in ways that not everybody who is in a minority position is able to do. Some are able to overcome the notion of being a minority and the baggage that comes with it. But I think that's the biggest benefit is being able to be in an environment where it's not about how you present. Now, in terms of the actual work that gets done, and of course, I only worked mainly in one industry in Ghana, and then some work with football as well. Sometimes the pace can feel a bit slower, right? But I would strongly recommend that doesn't mean that you suddenly drop your pace, because if you want to be a positive influencer and be a leader who transforms the environment, then you want to make sure that the good things that you have learned, you don't lord them over people, but you continue to exhibit them and demonstrate to people so that you make your positive influence. It is more fun working in Ghana, I'm afraid. I say that with a smile because I just found it a lot more fun.
Make us jealous.
So I have to smile at that, the memory of it. It's little things, right? I had to really reset coming back to the UK because I had to reset because this thing in the UK, people go to work in the morning and you may say good morning to one person, but literally everybody has a straight face and just goes to their desk. And so I had to make a conscious decision last year, which am I going to be? And I said, you know what? I prefer a work environment where you say hello and good morning to people in the morning. So I'm going to keep doing it because I think it makes everybody's day brighter. And in Ghana, it goes without saying. You can go for a walk in Ghana and the strangers on the street are saying good morning to each other. That's just great. So on a personal level, I think it does have this sort of liberating impact on life. Now, many people in Ghana won't entirely agree with me because I do hear people saying, Ghana, oh, I'm so stressed and everything is so stressful. But for me, because I'm comparing it to the UK, I'm like, no, this is good. Let's keep this pace. I'm good with this. But corporate expectations are very similar, right? Because especially if you're working for a company that's listed as I did, the expectations of a listed company, whether they're in the UK or they're in Ghana, are exactly the same. The regulations, the rules, the return on investment, the fact that you have to deliver, you have to build efficiency, profitability, it is all the same wherever you are. How you get it done may vary, but the expectations of what the will deliver are the same.
Thank you. It's good to know that Ghana is more fun at work. I have a few questions. Sometimes you stay or you've moved a lot quite a bit. When and sometimes we stay to prove a point. Sometimes we're in a place just to prove that no, I must last. I must conquer it because I don't want to prove people wrong, or I don't want to prove my boss wrong, or just to look like I failed. How have you managed that and said it's wrong, it's now no longer befitting for me, this is when I move? And what are the key signs that we look for, apart from does it fulfill your needs and stuff? What are the trigger points that have made you say I'm going to move back to the UK. I'm going to move to the DRC. I'm going to move to all these other places to, obviously, when opportunity calls, but you have to be looking as well, or were you always just headhunted?
Look, I wish I could answer this with some grand plan and say, you know what, I have this plan that's drawn up and it's amazing and it's just tick, tick, tick. And the answer to that is no, that's not the case at all. The element about opportunity cannot be overstated. However, it's also important to know the opportunities that you'll say no to. I haven't said yes to everything that's landed on my desk, because you can't. Now, how do you filter that? You do have to have a sense of the general direction in which you want to go with your life and with your career. And career should be a subset of your life, and not the other way around. So with that general direction and goal in mind, or vision in mind, then it helps. What it's helped me do is filter opportunities as they come through. So I would say to people that a lot of the time, the opportunities, I gave you the example of moving to Ghana, and subsequently in many cases, it's been the same. Remember that the people around you are your network. And for me, invariably, what that has meant is that invariably a lot of the time, it's someone I know who has put their hand up and for me and said, I think you should recruit Lucy. I think she'll do a good job, right? Now, it means that, and when I say I use the word people around you instead of network, because sometimes we think of networks very formally. But I like to think that even if I spend 5 minutes with someone, they're going to walk away with an impression of me, good or bad. That will be their impression of me, right? And in those 5 minutes, that person in my network has walked away with what they will say about me when my name is mentioned. So I think we need to be very deliberate in taking time to develop a degree of self-awareness, understand our values as individuals, our goals, what matters to us, so that as we engage with people authentically, those things come through. They shine through, because that's how opportunity is created, right? One of the challenges we still have in Ghana and largely across many African countries is that our job matching process is still quite inefficient. So we don't have, there are a number of them, like executives in Africa and a few others, but we don't have large scale job matching between, skill or candidate and role. So lots of it still comes down to people saying, I know this person, or I know that person, and recommending them. And then once that opportunity comes, you can filter it. You ask a part of your question, so how do you know when it's right to make a switch? I think it's really about whether I'm growing. Am I able to continue to grow in this environment as an individual? And am I able to continue linked to that to create the maximum value that I can for this institution? Because I strongly believe that there should be a difference between me and Joe Blogs or person B doing this job. In any particular job, there has to be a difference I bring to the job because I'm me, and equally someone else will bring a different difference to the job. But if it feels vanilla and it feels anybody could be doing it, then maybe I don't need to be the person doing it.
I like that. I have two questions, but the first one is, you've moved here, you've moved there, and they've all been successful, but this is questions for family people, or someone's asked, how do you justify, you've roused up your partner to say, okay, let's go here now, and then 3 years later, actually, I don't want to do that now. What's the best advice you would give for, obviously you look like you have a great marriage and a partnership, but how do you grow that, and people at the beginning stages, and getting their partner to see that maybe there's no job for you in Ghana, but there's a great job for me, or maybe there's no job for you in Kenya, but there's a great job for me, and it's a good family decision, but what are the things you have to think about, and how do you introduce that to even your kids and say, hey, you have to leave your friends and we're going to Africa now, not Africa, but a specific country there, and how do you navigate that and bring everyone on board emotionally, especially when you're going back and saying, look, I haven't failed, but I'm just gonna be nomadic for the season.
Oh, Jackie, I love the way you ask your questions. And by the way, in prior, I have spent some time with Jackie in private, especially in the school where she used to teach, and I went there. And she always looks this very serious. And when she's mastered the art of this kind of sort of asking the question with a straight face. But Jackie, I love it because the first part of your question goes, oh, it's all great and it's all successful and it's all wonderful. It's not, right? And the reason why I highlight that is that that's where you link it back to your family. In my case, my husband, my children, my friends, and so on, who are such an excellent support system. Because no, it's not a case of every time you go and it's great and it's successful. A lot of the time, like any change in life, it's actually a large toll. It takes a toll, and you need the support of others sometimes to get through it. And I remember so well one of the hardest transitions, and yet probably one of the most fulfilling jobs in the end, but a hard transition, was when we moved to DRC. And it was hard because I guess I'd underestimated the psychological impact. And I remember for the first 3 months, and it's not the first time, but at least in this job, I remember so well. I think practically every day I called my husband and said I was leaving. This isn't going to work. I don't know why I did this. And part of the reason was the fact that I was working in a language that I didn't think in. So I was, working in French, and I had to translate in my mind and think about it and then answer. I had a headache every single day because your brain is like processing information twice over just for a simple conversation, let alone a business conversation. But also the cultural style was different. So I come from a work background where, when people engage in English, they speak a certain way. When people engage in French, and especially depending on the location, or and I think we've heard this about Italy as well, it can feel a bit more, it can feel pushier. And I was, I was thinking, it was hard for me. So in terms of family, I would strongly suggest that before any of this, before you even kick off on even your very first move, that doesn't mean that you will take everything into the future and there won't be unforeseen scenarios. But if you're thinking of moving to Ghana to work, are you both on the same page about this move to Ghana? Or is it one of you who really wants to go and the other doesn't want to go, but maybe? And what is the benefit of moving to Ghana? Why are you moving to Ghana? Are you moving to Ghana just because you're from Ghana? Are you moving to Ghana because you think there's a professional benefit? Are you moving to Ghana because you think there's a benefit to your family as a whole, a benefit to your kids, a combination of this? What is your why for moving to Ghana? And if you can agree as a family on the why, then you can start to map out the steps you want to take. Because if you have your why and your goal in mind, then regardless of any obstacles you come across, or when you find yourself in a situation where you have to think about job switches or career switches, you go back to your why and check in to understand, does this fit in with the why that we set out, or does this take us completely off our path? Otherwise, when you face the obstacles and the challenges, and the example that I gave, you struggle to figure out how to navigate because you don't even know why you're doing it. In a sort of roundabout way, and trying to cite, they use the example of DRC, you have to know your why and why you're all doing this together.
As a woman as well, how do you get rid of the guilt? So yes, it's great for me. Yes, it would look good to the family, but how do you get rid of the guilt? You've justified your why, but then is it the why for everybody? Or is it okay for it to be a why for you for now? and getting rid of, if you understand what I'm saying. So how to say this is a great investment for me, and the trickle effect will be that it will be good for the family, but then not to feel the guilt, which a lot of women feel. I know I felt it even as a mother going to work, my regular 9 to 5.
Why do you feel guilty? You
So
shouldn't.
much mum guilt. Oh,
Going to work 9 to 5 is providing for your child, right? And
mm,
giving them a role model they can look up to. And I think equally for us, the why, it's interesting the way you position it, because when I say the why, and I gave career as one potential example of a why, but for us, the why is is all of us. And I suspect it works better because it's a collective why. So I'll share with you one of my concerns. I think that this is me now putting my mummy hat on. I think 12 years ago, or even earlier than that, when our kids were really little and before when we moved to Ghana, I was really concerned as a mum for about some of the things that I was seeing in the news and in the media, especially around Black children, Black boys, and it worried me a lot. Even though back then they were toddlers, and I felt that if I had the opportunity, or if I'd chosen to be a stay-at-home mom, I suspect I wouldn't be as worried. But so I not that I felt guilty, but I felt that protect them, almost shield them. And so for me, one of the whys, apart from the career, for us as a family, one of the whys was the opportunity for our kids to be in a different environment. That's not to say they won't come back and they can't come back, and they are back, but there was a why for them as well. Right? So now, how do I deal with the fact that you're still going to work and you're still leaving them? Is that enough of a why? That's a separate conversation in my mind, where you have to make sure that they are provided for and they have the right carers in your absence, whether it's school or whoever looks after them out of school. But I think the why is much more extensive than your individual career or your love of country as an individual, because especially if you've chosen to have a family, then you have a responsibility for the why to cover all of the family. So that why may not be one statement why, it may be it's most likely a number of whys. So yeah, I can't emphasize the why, honestly, and I've given you the children's perspective, I've given you career perspective. There has to be perspectives around the why that you can pull together and keep navigating with those whys in mind. Which means that the day that why changes, you also know the reason for the change, and then you can continue to navigate. I don't know whether that's answered your question clearly enough. If it hasn't, then please do pull me up on it.
sorry, I was trying to unmute myself. It has to some extent, but I have a lot more questions. And also other people, I'm going to give this opportunity to other people to ask questions as well. But I wanted to ask how you juggle being who you are in your corporate world and also an author. Kwame's going to put the link of your book and where to get it from as well. But how do you juggle the balance of you want to do a lot more things in your life? You're a mentor, you're on this session, which is taking your time as well. You do so many other things. How do you juggle that? And what's the advice you give to somebody who wants to do more than one thing with themselves?
Very good question. So I have a notebook, and from time to time, when I find it, and I have a number of notebooks, but there's one particular notebook, a blue notebook, that I was writing in 2010. I went back to it and I thought, oh my goodness, these things that I've been doing, I had written them in this notebook all these years ago, and I'm now getting the opportunity to do them. So my point is that if the things that you want to do, you should really write it down. I mean, and when I'm speaking, I tend not to try to use very direct biblical quotations, because I think sometimes they can be overplayed. So I try to get my message across in that same sense without sharing the actual biblical reference. But the Bible says that we should write the vision down and make it clear. right? If you want to achieve something, the starting point is having clarity in your own mind of what you want to achieve. Now, it may not happen next year. It may not happen in the next 5 years. It may not happen in the next 10 years, right? But I think you should be kind and patient enough to allow yourself to grow through it. So that notebook had in it, oh, I'd love to write a book one day. And then I found another notebook, which is a couple of years younger than that notebook. So maybe 5 years ago. And I'd written, oh, I'd love to write a book one day. But I never actually had the time or the opportunity and bandwidth to do that because I just didn't have the time. I was working, I had young kids, I had a family, so on and so forth. But what was interesting is that, remember my earlier comment about using social media as a platform of mentoring? What I didn't realize was that I had actually started writing the book in 2014, but I hadn't realized that that was what I was doing. And I kept writing and sharing. So the things I post, I post on social media, these were things where I actually took the time. I'd wake up in the morning, I'd sit down, I'd reflect, and then I'd write those, paragraph or two. It's not a lot. It was a little bit of writing that I could do before I went to work. And I had a schedule. So I had a whole plan around it. And it was these short snippets that I was posting. And it was 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And I started posting and posting and posting and posting and posting. And then by the time I got to end of 2017, which is when I left Airtel, I sat down and when I got through the whole let's have a rest phase, beginning of 2018, and when I was capturing the things I wanted to do, in addition to thinking about the future of my career, one of the things that came up was write a book. And I thought, actually, now I do have some time and I do have some bandwidth. And I went back and used all the material, all the things I had written. By that time, it was like 4 years of material. It was end of 2014. So 3 years of material became my starting point for actually taking the time to write a book. And I tell you, when I started writing the book, I thought it would take 3 months in the midst of all of life. It took a year, so it takes longer than it looks, even when you have material. But what's my ultimate point? My ultimate point is that if you have clarity around the things you want to achieve, you will find ways to weave them in over time. They may not happen immediately. You gave the example of public speaking. I'm actually very clear when it comes to the kind of topics I speak on and the kind of platforms I speak on. Very, very clear, which means that even though it looks like I do public speaking, I'm very clear on when I will and when I won't speak. And sometimes people are surprised when I flat out say I can't do it. If you ask me to come and talk about an industry I don't know anything about, just because I can speak English doesn't make me an authority on everything that's going on there. And so in addition to prioritization, it's also important to know where your strengths and your interests lie and stay focused on them.
I like that. You can't say yes to everything. So we're all now CEOs, everyone on this platform, and you're the Sam Jonah for us. What advice are you giving us at the CEO level? And yeah, so not at managerial level, not entry level into Ghana, at the CEO level.
Well, it really depends on what you're tasked to achieve, right? In my case, my task was transformation. So it was really about changing the business. Some leaders, CEOs come in and their job is to keep the ship steady, right? The shareholders are very happy with where the ship is, but you're supposed to keep it steady. And so those are just 2 examples. So let me think about what are the things that are consistent. As the CEO of the company, you are literally the culture carrier. The number 1 culture carrier of the organization is you. And I start with culture because every organization is about the people in the organization. So if you cannot day in, day out embody and live the culture that you expect the whole organization to have, then the organization fails because of you, because you weren't consistent in demonstrating it. And I remember even before I got to running Airtel, when we worked at Vodafone, my boss always used to tell us, and by then, that time we were his team, we were directors, and he said to us, you have to remember that every single time you walk into the office, the entire office is judging the mood of the company by you, right? If you come in and you look like, you know, the world is falling apart, it may be personal, but people think that the company is falling apart. If you come in and you're upbeat and you're engaging people and you're connecting with people, then they learn that, you know, things are going well and they should connect with people. So your number one job is to be a culture carrier. Number two is you have to be very, very clear in your own mind and have the tools to articulate it to others what the goal is. What are you trying to achieve? And I gave you the example of transforming the business, but you have to be very, very clear on what you're trying to achieve in that business. So make sure people know the business's objectives, how the opportunities lie, the expectations of them, hopefully at the very by division. If you can connect with more people and make it clearer beyond division, then great. But make the goals very, very, very clear. Allow people around you to shine, but equally be willing to take responsibility when it doesn't go so well, because you almost have to be this go-between where if you have to accept that if your people shine, you shine. So you don't always have to be the name that's mentioned. But if things go wrong, then there's a governance or a process issue, which means that ultimately the buck has to stop with you and you have to take responsibility. And I think the last thing I'll add, because the list could be very long, but the last thing I'll add is to say that in every single country in the world, not just in Ghana, but more so in Ghana, corporations are a vital contributor to the progress and the development of the country. Take that role extremely seriously. It could be directly through your products and services. It could be through we typically said corporate social responsibility, but now it's more ESG. It could be through the way you actually engage your own staff and the habits and what they learn in the company that they then share with their friends and family. Whatever it is, take your role seriously as a leader in the country who is there to make the country a better country and enhance development.
Thank you for that. They say that in 15 years' time, the schools, we're preparing our kids for jobs that don't actually exist. So we're actually not preparing them for the jobs that don't exist. Likewise, things are changing rapidly, ever so more in this day and age. But how is the corporate world changing, and how can we prepare for that change? So obviously you're at the top, so you have more of a helicopter view, but what can we do to adequately prepare, even mentally? What are the things that we have to be aware of for 15 years time or 10 years time when we get there, and how to stay there as well? And how is corporate Ghana changing at that in that same regard as well? So globally, the corporate world changing, and then Ghana as well.
So one of the things you'll find with me, especially when it comes to talking about the business world, is that a lot of my thinking switches very quickly to people, because I feel that if you focus on people, then you can attract the right skills and competencies that you need to achieve your business goals, but people have to want to stay. So everyone on this call is most likely already in their career, whether it's early, mid-career, maybe some are later in their careers. But the bottom line is the majority of us on this call are already in the workplace. If you want to start to think about 15 years from now, I would say invest in understanding the younger people who are actually coming behind us, because their habits, their way of thinking, the things that they prioritize are going to be the biggest impact in our corporate environments. Why do I say that? They're going to be sort of the workforce, the younger workforce, and every company has a pyramid, and you always have a swell at the entry level, which is much bigger, and it carries on a bit. But also they're going to be our customers of the future. So the way corporations are going to change and the way they're going to evolve are going to continue to be driven by what younger people think. Now, it sounds almost, overly simplified, But if you think about it, just a few years ago, some of the things we're talking about now, we're not talking about when it comes to social justice, when it comes to the impact of corporations' choices and decisions on the environment. We weren't talking about them as much. Why are we talking about them so much now? Because the current younger generation has decided that they won't accept it. And because as corporations, we care so much about what they think and how they think about it, because they're our future workforce and equally they are our future customers, we respond and we react. So to think about where many corporations will be in years to come, I think it's definitely worth observing the changes in how younger people see the world and interact with the world. Now, the question of those jobs of the future is actually a much harder question to answer, for the sheer fact that nobody actually completely knows. But I will leave you with an example. I'll leave you this question with an example that I heard at a panel discussion in San Francisco earlier this year. And the person speaking was a senior leader at Google. And she was asked a very similar question about the future of work. And she talked about how, and this applies to people like me, by the way, maybe, I don't want to say a generation ago because I start to sound too old, but a generation ago, right, being really good at manipulating Excel was a skill. Like, it was a big deal to be the kind of person who could write macros and pivot tables and blah, blah, blah. And then you learn access and blah, and all that kind of stuff. And that was, major skill. Now, what we do with Excel in terms of manipulating data, understanding relationships between data points and so on and so forth, the need for that has not gone away, but we found more efficient ways to do it, which means that if I show up with a CV that says, oh, I'm really good at Excel, it's not really a differentiator, Lucy. Thank you very much. But we have simpler ways. We don't actually need a person to do that for us. So if you get the analogy I'm trying to make here, is that I think some of the requirements of business may not change. How we deliver them is most likely going to change, which means that for the individual, it's about understanding the areas where human competence can make a material difference, and understand that some of the things we're doing today will become so commoditized that it won't be done by a human being. It will just be done by some machine somewhere, and it won't matter. Now, let me add one last piece to this, which is going back to the context of Ghana and many African countries, which for me is a source of concern. The source of concern is that I don't think we're adopting efficiency tools. I don't even want to say technology, but efficiency tools in the workplace enough. And the challenge with efficiency tools and technology is that they have a way of widening the gap between the haves and have-nots, right? So the companies that are using technology to drive their business start to pull away very rapidly from the companies who are not. So if there's one kind of downside or question mark I would say in the context of Ghana, how do we get more of our young people to become really savvy with technology, efficiency tools, better ways of working that will allow them to play as well in this economy where the differentiator of your skills is not going to be, can you write an Excel macro the same way it was for me?
Because the fear of automation is people think they're going to take my jobs, but that's a whole nother topic. Before we ask the people on the platform, just my last question is, what's next for you? So I started off with, where are you? And the last question is, what's next? Actually, I've got one last question for that, but what's next for you?
Jackie, look, what's next is a question that I've never had an answer for. Okay. What's next, what's present is part of what's next. What's present is that it's important that I continue to make a meaningful contribution where I am, where I find myself, whether at work, whether at home, or any other sphere of life, because ultimately that's what really matters. The best way to prepare for the future is to put your best foot forward today, be excellent, master what you're trying to deliver and what you're trying to work on. And that prepares you for what could be next. But the future has so many different turns that it's hard to predict into the future what would be next. But today is absolutely the best way to be prepared for what's next. So I'm ready for whatever will be next whenever that comes.
That's a good response, to live in the now. I think I was reading something about we're never present because we're always thinking of the future and 5 years time. So that's a good reminder. I know you're writing a book, kind of ish. I saw on your Instagram. I read your Instagram post with your nephew. Auntie, are you writing another book? But no pressure.
That is a lot of pressure. It takes time, It's probably the scariest thing I've ever done, because you know what, and the publisher will tell you, there were so many mornings he'd wake up to a WhatsApp from me saying, I think this is a bad idea. I think we should stop now because I think it's a really bad idea. Because writing a book is telling people what you think, and it's written. You don't have to be in the room. You don't have to be present for people to know what you think. So I'd love to write another book. I'm not in the process of actually writing it now. I do have some material, but we'll see. We'll see how we get there. But it is actually very, very consuming, because you have to be thinking right to focus and really put something down that could be meaningful to people.
Would say she's got this out if you need it. The bold new normal, you will need it. So Kwame's got the link down as well. But I also want to ask you, what book are you reading? Who's got your mind right now, or who are you listening to at the moment?
Gosh, okay. I have got, first of all, a friend of mine wrote to me the other day, said, Lucy, I'm reading your book. I'm really sorry it's taking me so long. I'm a slow reader. I'm like, join the club. Slow reader because, look.
Me too.
Time to even read, like finding the time. I'll be honest, finding the time is my biggest challenge. So I started reading White Fragility because it's very relevant to some work I'm doing at the moment. I've also got Akala's book on my bedside stand, which I still haven't managed to read. I need to get into that. So the two books that I have on the table right now are White Fragility and Akala. Akala's, it's called Natives, good book. So I've got those running. And the last book I tried to read, which I haven't finished reading, I think that book, I need to be on holiday to enjoy it properly, is Yajisi's Homecoming. Is it Homecoming or Homegoing? But I'm sure many of you heard Homegoing. Oh, I love it.
I love it too.
It's
Homecoming,
the historical, the mix of history and fiction. I just felt so that one I need to restart and really enjoy properly. And I think the last one I read through completely was Talking to Strangers, Malcolm Gladwell.
That's when I met you on the train. I listened to it on audio. Someone actually wrote that you should put your book on audio as well. But I've listened to his Talking to Strangers, David and Goliath, and there's another one. I can't remember.
So on the audio sneak preview, I know Kwame knows this already, so I'll tell them. We've actually been working on both an English and Tree version of the book.
Wow, Tree version, that's good. Amazing.
So English is almost done. Tree is getting close, but I think it's important to perhaps share it with people who prefer audiobooks, and more importantly, we want to make it more accessible to people in Ghana. So we're starting with
amazing. That's amazing. Language, I think that's the big thing, having our language being in formal contexts, like used as language of instruction in certain places. That's all I have for you. Well, I have loads, but I won't be selfish. I'm going to ask Effia with an A to unmute. She has a question.
Yes, it's Effia. Effia, right.
Hi, Effia.
Right. So my question is just some tips you have for people who want experience in the West before they can actually move back to Ghana.
And when you say tips, as in whether they should do it or not?
Yes, that is another aspect of it. And also in terms of the expectations managers or corporate leaders here expect maybe it could be quite different, sorry, from what we are used to maybe back home in Ghana. So maybe some differences.
I mean, first of all, I would strongly recommend that anyone who can get experience out of their home country should take it. I know that varied experience has served me well, but it's one of the things my mom always says, that she wishes everybody had the opportunity to be exposed to different environments. I do know of a company where I used to work that part of their very senior promotion criteria was whether or not the person had exposure beyond their own home country. So whatever it is, I think it's a good thing. So that's the first part of your question. The second part, as to whether the expectations are different, I think it depends. Things are getting, well, that doesn't really depend. It depends on what you're doing, is what I meant. I think it's becoming a little bit harder to find entry level positions. I see that a lot. So first, if anyone's having a hard time or knows people who are having a hard time, I think it's important to share with them that it's not entirely personal. It is a lot harder now. And so I would also suggest that if sometimes those opportunities come in the form of internships or short-term work opportunities that are not quite internships, but they're not paid, whatever form it takes, if you can afford to do it, please do.
Right.
Please do. If you can afford to, when I say afford to do it, not everyone can afford to work somewhere where they're not being paid.
Yeah.
Right? Example. So if you can't afford it, totally understand. But if you can afford to do it, please do it. You will learn a lot. You never know where it will lead, but more importantly, what it can do for your future career. May not lead to an opportunity in the same organization. If it does, great. If it doesn't, it will help your career. Now, this is applicable in Ghana, yes. I think the big difference with Ghana, though, is that we have fewer companies in Ghana, right? So fewer big companies. So that kind of narrows the opportunity set as well. So whereas companies in Ghana do take on interns or give people work experience or recruit entry level, like the number of companies that even have graduate programs, the real challenge is that I think there's a gap between supply and demand. There aren't enough companies to take on young people. Expectations are very similar, and that's why I talked about it depends in the beginning of the answer. If it's an internship, I think the expectation tends to be around the fact that you're there to mainly learn. If you add value, great, but mainly learn. I think if it's longer than that, then I strongly believe, I think, look, even internship, you should do that, but longer than that, you should really be thinking of adding value. If you've got a job, whatever level it is, and you're having the opportunity to work in a different environment, think about what value you're bringing to the company, because it gives the company a sort of payback for you being there, but also remember you're paving the way for the next person or the next group of people who come along to say that, oh, we put Lucy in the job and she did a good job. So if we get another 5 people like her, we should give them a shot, because they will bring something to us that we may not have here already.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, and greetings from Germany. Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, from Germany. Nana is next to ask the question.
All right, so I was going to ask, in terms of just being agile at work, you were talking about, growing and learning and growth and development, I guess I should say. So in terms of being agile, what would you say are some things that you can use to help you be agile at work, to help you, be transformative and really contribute?
Okay, good question. Let me share with you my understanding of your question. So it's not so much about your personal growth and development, but more about how you're not boxed into the one job that you're doing and you're contributing more broadly. Is that an appropriate understanding?
I was thinking more like, how do you adapt and stay agile, like in the workforce, especially in Ghana?
Okay, adapt and stay agile. So accelerate learning of the actual job, right? How you actually do the job. I've heard people say things like you spend the first year learning the job, and then you spend the second year delivering, and then you spend the third year like really being a master, and then you get promoted. And I always ask people, why are you breaking it out in years? What if you can learn the job in 3 months or less? So first of all, I would say that you need to want to learn the job and become a master of the job really quickly.
Okay.
Because if you can master your job really quickly, what that then does is that you develop a system of delivery that works, that gives you mental space to think beyond your job. Now, why is this important? Because to grow, you need to understand where your job fits in with the larger organization and what they're trying to achieve. And if you can see where your role fits in to the bigger picture, then you can start to think about what else can I be doing in addition to my role? How can I grow my role, grow what I'm doing to create even more value for the corporation? How do I connect? And then the next thing I'd say is that how do I connect with the right people for whom my role makes a difference, or makes their work better, or makes them do better in their jobs? I'd say the other reason why it's important to master your job quickly and have mental space is that it will allow you to be curious to learn other things in the organization. If you can learn about other functions, other roles in the corporation, even when you're in a meeting setting, you're able to credibly make contributions that are not only linked to your job. And if you can do all of this, then you're more likely to be the person that people consider and think of when new opportunities come up. So that agility should mean that you don't have a box around you, and you continue to expand your space.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yvonne has a question for you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, French professionals and Lucy, for putting this on. It's been extremely helpful. Sorry about the noise. I'm on the train at the minute, so if you can't hear me, please do let me know. My question is around, I would say if I was moving to Ghana, I'd be an experienced hire. How would I look into getting some work experience, maybe work shadowing, paid or unpaid, in Ghana? And is that something that is would be profitable? Thank you.
Do you say would be profitable or possible?
Profitable, as in terms of my trying to get into the network in Ghana.
Yeah.
But possible as well.
Yeah, look, I think if you're willing to give up some of your time for free, which means you're physically in Ghana already, like you've moved yourself and you're physically in Ghana. If you're willing to give up your time and contribute and shadow, not just shadow, but actually just be part of an organization, especially if you have the bandwidth or you can afford to do some of it for free sometimes, then not only would I say go for it, but I do find that there are such opportunities. I remember a young lady came to see me a few years ago, and she was working in an educational institution, but she wanted to build a career in human resource management. And but she was an experienced person. So the first thing I said to her was, well, go and volunteer at a company. And she was horrified. She's like, why would you say that to me, Lucia? I've got all these years of experience. And I said, well, think about it. You're not an HR professional. You're an experienced person. What value do you bring to an HR organization? I would argue close to none. So what is their reason for hiring you? None. But if if they can pay you by allowing you to be there for free, and you can learn, now that's your pay, so that you can go on and build your career. Eventually I convinced her and she did it. So there are a few companies who would do that. I say few as if there's a lack of willingness. It's not a lack of willingness. Like I said, it's the number of companies. I think it would depend, though, very specifically on the area you want to go into. So while there are opportunities, and I've given you this example of someone in HR, I would say that the success, the potential success of it really will depend on the area you want to go into. Now, what I wouldn't recommend is taking a junior paid position hoping that somehow someone will have an epiphany that you're underpaid and underutilized and suddenly bump you up. Like in the UK, in Ghana, corporations don't behave like that. So you're much better off demonstrating your skills and ability pro bono, and then trying to use that to leverage and get a job, than hoping that a junior position will translate into a bigger position. But I think ultimately, and I'm happy if you want to, connect after this, it will depend on the specific job function area you're thinking of.
Thank you
Just
very
to
much.
segue into that, as part of the platform, Alice is championing our social responsibility program, just to ensure that where possible, people can get those experiences and stuff. Last question from Mavis.
Hi, Mavis.
Exactly. Sorry, I was trying to unmute myself, struggling. Sorry. Thank you so much for this opportunity, both Jackie and Kwame. And thank you, Lucy, for taking your time to speak to us. For me, I think I would like to find out a bit more, how do one join the Women Executive Network? Because I am keen in opening my own business as I move to Ghana. And so working for somebody is not really in my line, so yeah, so being part of such a network would be great for me. And I don't know how I can join or what the criteria are.
Okay. I'll answer your question and then I'll ask you a question if you don't mind.
Super.
So the Executive Women Network, we have a website. It's www.ewntree.com.
Okay.
So EWN and the word tree, all one word, TREE, ewntree.com. And all the application processes the forms are there. We have an office, so the office manager will respond to you once you submit your application. We have 2 levels, associate and associate member and full member. The associate members tend to be sort of a bit more, everyone in the network has professional experience, whether it's entrepreneurial or in a corporation. But what we try to do is that we have more junior members who are associates, and that really the difference is that they get to pay less because obviously they're less experienced. We don't want them to have to face the same kind of membership burden. And then the full members are people who are further more advanced in their careers. That's really the only difference. And everyone who applies, is reviewed, and then they get feedback. And what we tend to do with younger women, sort of school leaders or people in university and so on, is we focus more on mentoring them rather than kind of them joining the network. So yeah, everything is on the EWN website. My question to you though was, why did you say, I don't want to work for anybody?
Well, it's because since I've been a child, I always want to own my own business. And I have also been working. Currently, I'm in a full-time work. And I also was a bit of a contractor as well. So for me, working for myself has been something that I've always enjoyed. It gives me that flexibility that I feel like I need. And also my own purpose is to be able to to provide employment as my contribution to Ghana society as I move back. And that's something I've been having since I was in my teens, since I was little, so it's come to that end. And plus also I feel like the way I am as a person, working for somebody is, I do it now and I do it to my best ability, but it's not something that I would like to do. So it doesn't have anything to do with Ghana. It's just the way I am, and I think what suits me best.
Yeah. Thank you for for humoring me and responding. The reason why I asked the question is that there's one other benefit of working for a company, even if you want to become an entrepreneur, is that you kind of buy time to learn the environment. I think starting a business is challenging. But starting in a business in an environment that you may be familiar with as a professional, right? We may school children or our youngsters. It's a different context when you're thinking about it professionally. And sometimes working for a company for a while can serve as a great opportunity to learn the way things work as you settle in, before you kind of start your own organization, which would be great, because I love the idea that you want to create jobs. So that's the only reason why I was probing, that there is some benefit even for entrepreneurs to spend some time working for a company.
Yeah, that definitely. I mean, if I move back, I won't mind if I find a suitable business to be able to do, you know, a bit of internship with. But obviously, to move back, I need to have obviously some income that will allow me to be able to have that freedom to move. So if I do secure myself something that gives me that flow of income, then yes, like you said, definitely it's a good advice. I don't mind finding a company to work with, to able to, it will help me to study the culture a little bit more, how to deal with employees, and, you know, find better strategies as to how best to run my business. So yeah, thank you for that. That's definitely a good point there.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I think Mavis had the last question. Have you finished your questions, Mavis?
Yes, Jackie, thank you.
Oh, you finished? Okay. Okay. Just like to thank Lucy again. All good things must come to an end. I had so many questions for myself and other people as well, but can't exhaust everything now. Hopefully there'll be a part 2 with a different purpose maybe. But just also
definitely.
Are you answering her question? But just to also emphasize, thank you for everyone who's joined, particularly those who are new as well, just to introduce Fenchurch Professionals again. It's a networking platform that it's kind of like the LinkedIn and Mumsnet. So LinkedIn, whereby you're able to network with each other, but also, I don't know whether anyone's been on Mumsnet, but it's like a forum. It's like a WhatsApp chat group on the website. So that's what we're trying to do. So your support and joining would be very much appreciated. Kwame is going to put the link for, right now we're in the final stages of completing the website, but at the moment we're on WhatsApp, and it's very handy. It's very it's a good support network, I found, and questions are answered, questions are given, and we promote Ghana in a positive light. It's not every day that you send spam videos of things going wrong. So we are a positive change. So do join the group and do share it as well. But thank you, Lucy, once again. Thank you, everyone, as well. And yeah, we've got our event in December if anyone's coming to Ghana. God willing, the borders will still be open. So it's on the 22nd of December, and more details will be given as well. And that's it for the night.
Thank you all very much. Good night.
Thank you so much, Lucy. We'll catch up.
Bye.
Thank you, Lucy.
Thank you, guys. Good night.
Good night.